It has become a wonderful tradition to incorporate an art exhibit of Armenian artists into the holiday celebrations. It was first put together by the efforts of the curator Vicky Hovhannisyan. All of the exhibits took place under the auspices of Archbishop Barsamian, who's a strong supporter of Armenian artists. This year's art exhibition opening took place on Saturday with the Archbishop's participation, as well as Father Mardiros Shevyan, curator Vicky Hovhannisyan, and the exhibiting artists. The curator of this year's exhibition was Vasken Kalajian, a prominent Armenian artist himself.
Ինչ principle, ինչ սկզբունքով ընտրեցիր նկարիչները?
So what I thought would be interesting to do is to mix several ideas. And the first thing was, for me, was to make sure that we had at least 50% female participation. So I worked really hard to find women artists, photographers, and so on. And the next thing what I thought was that because typically we always see kind of middle-aged or mature artists. So I wanted to also find young, up-and-coming artists. So that's the other thing. And thanks to your TV show, I was able to find this wonderful, beautiful artist that we see here, the young artists, because you interview them all. And your show has been such a great service to the community. So I also really wanted to take the time to thank the Archbishop for supporting this program, and of course Vicky Hovhannisyan for asking me to help her to do this. So going back to the topic, the other thing what I wanted to do is to try to mix things so that we have a really nice balance of painters, sculptors, photography. We have silk, fabric art, some beautiful three-dimensional work here, construction kind of work. So that was basically the idea behind it.
Կան արդյոք արտիստներ, որոնք այս ցուցահանդեսեն դուրս մնացին եւ մտքիդ մեջ են, որ հաջորդին անոնքալ մասնակցեն։
Անպայման Կարինե, շատ կարևոր է որ աս պրոգրամը շարունակենք։ Հիմա աս պրոգրամը, we call it art at the Cathedral. So we're noticing that this is picking up very serious momentum, not only in terms of the level of the art and the interest from the artists who are Armenian or connected to Armenian community. So that's going to continue, and I'm really excited that also because of Archbishop Khajak Barsamian's support, he even mentioned the possibility that we might be able to have a permanent gallery where instead of having these shows for 2 days, we could have like a regular gallery with a whole month show. And it's such a wonderful thing for Armenian artists to have the venue right here in Manhattan to show their work. And the other thing is about the artists, yes, we had to unfortunately limit because of the space and also because of the logistics. For example, I was able to contact so many talented artists from, let's say, Boston area or Chicago or California, even Canada, as far as Canada. But the cost of shipping work and the insurance and all that, it made it really prohibitive. So there are a lot of artists really want to show the work they're here. So I think that if we were able to expand this program and make it more of a long-term gallery space, then we could really find the funding and the support to bring all this art and show it long-term.
Մեկ անգամ եւս շնորհավորում եմ հրաշալի ցուցահանդեսը եւ ինչպես որ ասում են բարձ կտկատար շնորհակալություն.
Thank you, Karina. Thanks so much for your support.
The participating artists were Robert Arakelian, Karen Khachatryan, Mary Azarian, the Naltchayan brothers, Emma Grigoryan, Vasken Kalajian, Kevork George Kassabian, Haik Kocharian, Mary Rude, Rosa Minasian, Anna Navardarsian, Kardash Onik, Rudik Petrosian, Lara Ter Abramyants, Isa Tuma, Hermine Yayian, Razmik Boghosian, Shanur, Joyce Naltchayan Boghosian.
You don't meet every day photographers who get the opportunity to work in a cabinet and photograph a president and photograph our US government and cabinet. It's wonderful to meet you. Thank you very much for this interview. I'm sure our audience would be very interested to understand better exactly how does the intricacies of the job, how exactly it works.
Well, the United States president has a staff of photographers who photograph and document his everyday activities, starting with his intelligence briefings at 7 in the morning, all the way through the day, a lunch meeting, afternoon meetings, and can even involve a dinner or a state dinner through the night. So some days we'd travel, we'd go on foreign trips.
And how were you able to lend this work?
Well, a lot has to do with hard work, but good timing. My father was a Washington Post photographer in Washington since President Eisenhower. So he covered the White House, every president from Eisenhower to Clinton when he passed away in 1994. And when Reagan was president, I had the opportunity to do an internship for 3 months with Vice President George Bush's photographer, and this is, of course, Bush Sr. So I helped out for the 3 months, and when Bush won, David Valdez asked if I would work there permanently as his assistant for 4 years. And I said, sure, great. And I had the opportunity to cover a few Armenian meetings, too.
Such as?
The Catholicos came. Actually, that was with Clinton. I was a news photographer then. But for George Bush, I believe it was, he was vice president. And I don't know if I should tell this story, but I will. I was still an intern, and the mayor of Gumri, where the earthquake was, he came to meet with Reagan. Reagan wasn't able to meet with him that day, so he met with Vice President George Bush, and it was January 6th, Armenian Christmas. And my boss, David Valdez, was busy. He said, Joyce, you're Armenian, you go photograph this meeting. And I went upstairs, and I was in the vice president's office with him, and he was warming himself near the fire, and I said, well, sir, it's Armenian Christmas today. And he said, really? Well, how do you say Merry Christmas in Armenian? And so I'll dare to say it now. Shunoravor subsununt. And he looked at me and he said, can you give me something a little easier? And I said, well, you could say parev. So as they came in, he said, as we say in Armenian, parev. And they were looking at each other, and they were excited that he was trying to speak Armenian. And they presented him with 2 large cognac, bottles of cognac with beautiful inscription, the earthquake, when the earthquake happened, one was inscribed to George Bush, one was inscribed to Ronald Reagan, and by the end of the meeting, they had left, and the vice president, then president-elect, said, these are just going to go into National Archives. Will you please accept these? And so I have them.
Սիրելի ռազմիկ, շնորհավորում եմ։ Մենք բոլորս մինչև հիմա գիտենք, հիանում են Կարինեյով քո աղջկա բացառիկ տաղանդով, որպես դաշնակահարուհի, եւ ուզում եմ, որ մեր հանդիսատեսը իմանա, որ այս բացառիկ տաղանդավոր աղջիկը ծնունդ է բացառիկ տաղանդավոր հորից։ Ինչ է նշանակում քեզ համար ներկայություն ունենալ քո գործով այս ցուցահանդեսին։
Ճիշտ ասած, առաջի անգամ ես մեծ հաճույք ստացա հանդիպելով իմ արվեստագետ ընկերներին, հաճելի միջավայր էր, հաճելի շատ ուրախ վիճակի մեջ եմ ես հիմա, այնց որ նույնիսկ չգիտեմ ինչ ասեմ։ Ցանկալի որ ակտիվ լինի այս պահը, հաջող լինի, ես իմ տարին մի անգամ քիչ է։ Ես կուզենայի որ ել ավելի շատ մենք հանդիպենք, տեսնենք իրար, ցուցադրվենք։ Շնորհակալություն ես միջոցառման կազմակերպողին։
What I'm impressed with is it's very bold. I like the boldness of the art, and a lot of it has very, very intense colors, and I'm attracted to that as well. And of course, the main reason that we came to the exhibit is because we're friends with Hovik Dalakian, and now to see it in an exhibit like this with other Armenian artists, it's been quite extraordinary. So we really, really are happy that we had a chance to be here.
And I'm so delighted to be here to see this work by Armenian artists. Because for me, art is universal. But yet when I look at this art, it has its own touch to it. And for me, it's very special because I'm looking at culture, I'm looking at history, I'm looking at art that speaks to my soul. So it's while it's Armenian art, it's art that I can identify with, and I feel something being here.
This impressive exhibition at St. Vartan Cathedral was another example of our Mother Church serving the community, as not only a spiritual sanctuary, but also as a cultural and educational hub for all Armenians.